Our program continues with the presentation of the Aspen Institute Corporate Leadership Award, presented to an individual whose leadership exemplifies dedication to the betterment of society. Here to present the award to this year's honoree is Jim Crown, Chairman of the Aspen Institute Board of Trustees.
Hello, I'm Jim Crown, Chairman of the Board of the Aspen Institute, and thank you very much for joining us for this year's annual awards program. Each year, our annual award celebration provides us with the opportunity to honor exemplars of values-based leadership and those who have made significant contributions to improving society. I'm privileged to present Ursula Burns with the Aspen Institute's Corporate Leadership Award. Ursula has been a trailblazing role model and a singular innovator. And she has done this not only while her industry was undergoing dramatic transformation, but also during a time of profound shifts in how businesses operate and how CEOs lead. The Corporate Leadership Award honors an individual whose leadership and dedication to the betterment of society exemplify the values and traditions of the Aspen Institute. Ursula Burns has demonstrated these values through her vision and her courage to take new paths on behalf of communities, stakeholders, and employees alike. Unquestionably, Ursula has helped redefine the role of the private sector in the 21st century, and in doing so, she represents the highest standards of corporate citizenship. What is so exciting about her accomplishments is that they represent evidence that values-based leadership and a commitment to the public good can bring extraordinary changes to the benefit of all. As many of you might know her personal story, she is the daughter of a first-generation immigrant mother who worked her way through school, earning a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Columbia University. She started at the Xerox Corporation as a summer intern and eventually rose to become a transformational CEO. And as many of you know, she was the first Black woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. On behalf of the Aspen Institute, it's an honor to present the Corporate Leadership Award to you, Ursula Burns, and thank you for being with us here for this event. And I now have the great pleasure of turning our program over to Ford Foundation President and longtime friend, Darren Walker, who will be interviewing our awardee.
Thank you, Jim, so much for that lovely introduction of our honoree, Ursula Burns, who is receiving the 2021 Aspen Institute Corporate Leadership Award. Welcome, Ursula Burns, and congratulations.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you, the Aspen Institute, for honoring me today.
I want to, Ursula, begin by just having you reflect, because your journey, the trajectory of a young girl from a working class background, raised in public housing on the Lower East Side of New York, you absolutely had some barriers and challenges to ascending to one of the great positions in corporate America. You were chairman and chief executive officer of the Xerox Corporation, the first African-American woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. I know that that journey was punctuated by many, many challenges, and yet you prevailed and you were truly an outstanding leader for Xerox. So let's talk about what it means to be a CEO, obviously as a woman, an African-American. Just reflect on that for a bit.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that I've spent the latter part of the past decade thinking about, as I've transitioned out of Xerox and have been placed in more and more a position of the first, right, of this legacy leader who kind of paved the way for others. What I realize now is that, while I was going through my time at Xerox, I literally was just working. I was not thinking about legacy, or not thinking a lot about me, or even about Black people or Black women. What I was thinking more about was just getting the job done. and getting the job done in a way that anyone broadly can be proud of the job that I did, and that I could be proud of it as well. As I moved through and kind of got on close to the other side, I realized how big a deal this was, not only for me and for Xerox, but also how big a deal it was for people who looked like me and to people who didn't look like me, in presenting to the world the ability of people who look like me to be just a part of the tapestry of leadership. And to be a good part of it. You know, somebody told me when I was younger that I had 3 strikes against me. I was a girl, I was Black. This is what they tell me. You're a girl, you're Black, and you're poor. And 2 of those things I can't change. And even if I could change them, I wouldn't. The poverty thing I would change in a minute, right? The thing that I had going for me was that I had an unbelievable foundation, set by this amazing person who was my mother. I had an unbelievable and kind of varied support structure from all different places. Some places was the government when I needed it to get educational or funding support for my education, from white male business leaders who gave me a shot here and there, or at least gave me visibility here and there, from some of my best friends and mentors, people like Vernon Jordan, like Ken Chenault, like you, Darren, who said, this is a person who is probably worthy of the time and energy to get a shot. So I happen to have a great foundation, but I had I think the best and most important asset that I had was the fact that other people around me said, she's worth more, let's give her a shot, she's worth it. She's proven that she can do ABC. That means she may be able to, very likely be able to do DEF, right? So I had this unbelievable reservoir and wealth of people who looked at me and gave me a shot and gave me a break. I had the foundation of education, of hard work, of clarity of thought, of the ability to speak my mind, the bravery to speak my mind. I had that foundation to take advantage of the opportunities. But the combination of the 2 things were needed. So when I entered Xerox and started to run through the company, which was basically a whole lot of fun. There's a problem, there's a job, go do it. Okay, fine, I'll do that, I'll go do that, go do that, go do that. There was a point when somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, no more is this only for you and for Xerox. This is now a big deal. You're going to be on the public stage. So we have to ready you for that. We have to ready you to lead this company, to be a role model for our people broadly in Xerox, a role model for people who look like you and for people who don't look like you. So there was a point where it switched, and that point was when I started to really realize that all of this work that I had done up until this point, which I thought was just my job, was actually preparing me for something significantly more important than just leading a Fortune 500 company.
So let's talk about corporate America and what has happened in the last couple of years. Certainly the murders in 2020, particularly George Floyd's murder, changed in many ways, at least for a time, the conversation in the boardroom and the C-suite. We had, for the first time, serious conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion. Give your assessment, Ursula, of progress.
What I saw happen was people some of it driven by their true hearts, some of it driven because their constituents, their employees, their communities wouldn't allow them to not react. But we saw a reaction by corporate America that was one of, hold on, let me make sure I understand enough about what's going on so that I can think about contributing to the solution. That's what we saw. And we saw some companies, some business leaders actually do more than just think about it, which is a big deal, by the way. Thinking about it is a big deal. But we saw people move beyond that. Even before they knew exactly what to do, they said, I'm going to do something. So I'm going to give money to causes like Black Lives Matter. I'm going to give money to foundations that work in this space. I'm going to hire more aggressively people of color. I'm going to fund businesses of people of color who start businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So we saw just everything kind of create a whole bunch of smoke and dust up in the air. Some of that dust has settled and turned out to be totally useless. But I think for the first time in my life, which is kind of long right now, I feel that we have reached a point where all of the momentum that we saw after the killing of George Floyd is not there. So it's not as aggressive as it was the day after that or the day of it, but the momentum is still there. And it's not going to be possible for corporate America to take the stance that it does oftentimes in these uncomfortable times, which is, let's just kind of lay low long enough and it'll go away. One of the best things that has happened in the last couple of years is that business is no longer expected to be totally silent on issues that are of import to the world and to the future. We have to have a point of view. The place that that's coming out bigger is in ESG, the environmental side, right? But that practice that we're getting in the environmental side is going to spill over to how we effectively engage society as private businesses, as non-governmental agencies or non-governmental people, how we engage society from a power perspective, from an influence perspective. How do we do that for the good of the world versus for the good of me and of Xerox alone? All have to come together and figure out a way to lay the foundation for a better world, and it has to be done in partnership.
So as we close, Ursula Burns, I'd like you to share advice to the next generation of CEOs. What skills, capability, knowledge base, experience will they need to have in order to successfully lead and manage 21st century corporate America?
One of the most important things about leadership is to define the reality and give hope. So you have to define the reality and define hope. What does good look like? What's the real situation we are? Then you can build a strategy to get from where you are to hope. So defining reality and giving hope is one of the most important attributes. Think about how difficult that is. Like, you have to understand enough about the today, but also have resilience, compassion, empathy to think about, and I don't mean that that's even in business, right? All of those things, this grit to think about what good really looks like. I used to think it was things like, how many hours could you possibly, how I can carry the weight. I can carry the weight. I think I've learned now at 63, I can definitely carry the weight. It's not enough. It's not enough. And by the way, it's more than not enough. That alone is a formula for failure. This ability to see what the future can look like for your company, for the P&L of your company. It could be that basic, right? How successful, how efficient, how whatever the hell it is, how much of a great supply chain. Understanding that and then building towards that, this completeness and broad completeness of what good looks like, understanding that. So this idea of leading from an aspirational perspective is probably the most invigorating and eye-opening and value-creating perspective that a leader can have. One of the things I had to do before I became CEO was we had, always financial crises in companies I happen to be engaged with. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I had a financial crisis and I had to, one of the jobs was save $2 billion. Figure out a way to save $2 billion. And I remember I wrote about this in my book. I said, at the end of the day, this is going to sound ridiculous, but if all it was to save $2 billion, my daughter could have done that. She looks at all of the things you spend money on and you start to cut it. They're pretty straightforward. You say, well, we spend money on shoes. We're going to buy less shoes. We'll buy cheaper shoes. We're going to spend healthcare. We're going to buy less healthcare, buy cheaper healthcare. Parts, we're going to buy less parts. That's not what the goal wasn't to save $2 billion. It was to make efficient, significantly more efficient, while delivering value, continuing to deliver more on more value, to fundamentally change the way that the business operated that defined a new space to continue to deliver unbelievable value to our shareholders, to our customers, most importantly, to our communities and to our employees, and do it for less. The for less part is what we spend most of the time on. The other things around it, the other check boxes that you have to be able to check to have true success, is what the true leadership is about. It's about fitting it all together.
Well, Ursula Burns, you certainly personify true, exemplary, excellent leadership. And I know everyone at the Aspen Institute is thrilled, delighted, and grateful to you as you accept their annual Corporate Leadership Award. Again, congratulations, Ursula Burns, on this great honor.
Thank you so much, Darren Walker, and thank you, Aspen Institute.